He said hi to me. Hi.
Bhante, yeah, my friend is also joining today's serious Vipassana.
Who is your daughter?
Okay.
Yeah?
Here we go, Bhante.
Okay. Everybody, father, daughter, mother, daughters, and so forth, other parents and children can join us. Okay? Okay. Let us begin our metta meditation first. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds. Whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth, may all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere. Neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm to another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here.
Not falling into erroneous views, but
oneself
virtuous and endowed with vision, removing
removing
desire for sensual pleasures,
one comes never again to birth in the womb. Let us continue our practice. We pay total mindful attention to our breathing as we do every day. Mindful attention, we have to remind everybody, mindful attention is the attention without greed, hatred and delusion, because these are unwholesome roots. When we don't have them, the mind becomes very clear, and then with this state of mind, we pay attention to the breath. As we breathe in, we notice the breath touching our nostrils and expanding our chest area and lower abdominal area. As we breathe out, lower abdominal area, chest area contracts, the breath leaves our nostrils. So as we keep repeating this, we also notice two pauses. One when inhaling completes, the other when exhaling completes. So noticing these brief pauses without trying to dwell upon it, manipulate it or widen it or exaggerate it, let it be so as it is. And then we notice the feeling of breath, perceptions, thought and consciousness. When we breathe in, arise, they disappear when we breathe out, and new feeling, new perception, new thought, new consciousness arise. And they too fade away when we breathe in. This also shows us how quickly things are changing. This is our almost superficial awareness of change, impermanence. With this, however, the breath becomes calm, relaxed and peaceful. The body becomes calm, relaxed and peaceful. The mind becomes calm, relaxed and peaceful. And then, since there is nothing to hold on to or hold back, things are simply flowing, continuously flowing. Then the awareness of letting go or generosity is in a rudimentary form in our mind. It develops as we keep paying attention to our breath with mindfulness and noticing these changes. And then our body, mind and the breath relaxes further. Then there is no rigidity, uptightness, resentment. Instead, the feeling of metta arises in our mind. And then we continue paying attention to our breathing. As we know, any feeling arises along with the breath also disappears, passes away. And then we also know that we are practicing this for the suffering beings who are innumerable. There are so many. When we know that there are many suffering beings, compassion arises naturally, spontaneously in our mind. And then mind becomes even further relaxed. Our restlessness and worry fades away. Then arises a moment of joy, and then our sleepiness and drowsiness fades away. Our doubt fades away when we see all these truth or results of this truth. And then we have a moment of happiness. Joy leads to happiness. When we gain happiness, that also is very subtle, very soothing, comforting, not agitating or exciting, but it makes us more peaceful, and then as a result we gain concentration. This invariably has been mentioned by the Buddha in many discourses. Sukhino chittang samadhyati, the mind of one who is happy gains concentration. And with this concentration, we don't become like vegetable, because this concentration gradually grows with awareness, with mindfulness. Mindfulness arises first, as we also see in the Noble Eightfold Path. Concentration is the last in that list. And when concentration arises with mindfulness, we become aware of the subtlest changes in our body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. They are changing, but we are not aware of that change until we gain good concentration. Now, with this, I want all of us to continue our practice. Dukkha patta ca niddukkha, bhaya patta ca nibbhaya, soka patta ca nissoka, Hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all beings be. Friends, with this metta thought in mind, let me try to answer your questions. Could you read the questions?
Yes, Bhante.
Mhm.
The first question relates to your teaching yesterday, Bhante. Why are the four elements clean when not used by the body, but unclean when used by the body? Since the elements are the same, what makes them unclean here but clean there?
Okay, that's very obvious. This body, once the the body made up of these elements, and the elements in the food, clothing, and so forth that we use by this body made up of four elements. But the body itself is inside, so many things are happening. Uh, Outside elements don't have them. For instance, there is something called heart that pumps. There is something called blood. Outside elements don't have heart or blood. Inside elements have biles in this body, biles. Outside elements don't have biles in them as they are. And inside body is always body generates heat. Outside body don't generate heat except the heat that comes from the sun. And inside body is the food is fermenting. Once the food is fermenting inside, it is not very pleasant or clean. So many heat, bile, fermenting, gas, and the functioning, all these things, churning and making it compost, just like compost. When it does all this, uh, then it turns out to be unclean. There are a lot of bacteria. Outside also there are bacteria, inside there are more bacteria. In fact, we may have trillions of bacteria, all kinds of bacteria. These bacteria also are living beings, and they also pass their urine, pass their intestine, what you call digested things out. You may remember in your anatomy or biology that when we uh, die, the body swells up very quickly because of the bacteria begins to eat this up and pass their what you call digested things, excrement. They also have feces, excrement, and they are not very big, but and they also have gas, especially when bacteria pass gas. All this swells up the body. So bacteria is working inside and making it not very clean. And therefore, clean material, clean elements become unclean because these activities inside. We all know that, as I mentioned yesterday, our clothes have to be washed very often, especially in summer, because the thing that comes out of our body, especially sweat, sweat is mixed with oil that is coming from the fat in our body. All when mixed up, they are smelly. And therefore, the external elements don't have this. They don't, some trees and so forth, plants and so forth may have oil, but they don't go through this kind of fermentation, decomposing like ours. Of course, external elements like trees and so forth, they decompose. But when they decompose, they don't generate any smell, odor. But when this body inside food and so forth go through the metabolic processes, then it turns into a compost, and that becomes very unclean. There are so many reasons for external clean animal elements to become unclean when we use it. You can see in uh, biology particularly. Biology, chemistry, I have not studied these things. I did not study. I simply use my common sense, biology, common sense, physics, common sense, what you call chemistry, I don't, even though I don't I have not studied them, I have little common sense to understand these things. With this, I explain these things. If you want to know more details, please study biology.
Thank you, Bhante. Let's see. This question is about a simile that is often mentioned in Buddhist circles. Could you please clarify the simile of the arrow about feelings in Salatha Sutta? As I understand, we cannot avoid bodily feelings. However, we can avoid the mental feelings. Recently, we have discussed that there are wholesome and unwholesome mental feelings. Are we aiming to end the mental feelings or only, are we aiming to end all the mental feelings or only unwholesome mental feelings?
Okay. There is discourse in Majjhima Nikaya where Buddha has mentioned there are 6 kind of pleasant feelings, 6 kind of unpleasant feeling, 6 kind of neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings. When they are using, they are divided into 2, samisa, niramisa. Samisa is with greed, hatred and delusion. The feeling that triggers our greed, hatred and delusion, or arising from greed, hatred and delusion, is called samisa. Samisa. Niramisa means the feeling that arises without greed, hatred or delusion. In brief, it's very beautiful discourse, explanation. Using the niramisa, remember these 2 words, amisa, samisa, niramisa. If you remember these 2 words, it will be easy for me to explain. Otherwise, I have to go through all these technical terms. Samisa is with greed, hatred and delusion. Niramisa means without greed, hatred and delusion. Using niramisa, pleasure, we overcome samisa pleasure. Using niramisa dukkha, we overcome samisa dukkha. Using niramisa neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling, we overcome samisa pleasant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. Now, what is left now with? We are left with only niramisa happiness, niramisa pain, niramisa neither plain nor unpleasant, niramisa. And then using niramisa pleasure, we overcome niramisa dukkha. Now we have only niramisa, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, and niramisa happiness. Using niramisa, neither pain nor pleasant feeling, we overcome niramisa happiness. Now what is left? What is left is niramisa, neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. That's called upekha. Upekha in Pali. Now we have only niramisa upekha. Niramisa upekha means upekha, neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. Also, we divide into two. One is ekatta upekha, other is nanatta upekha. The upekha, upekha, the word I use upekha to make it easy for me to explain. Upekha means neither pleasant nor unpleasant feeling. Upekha divided into two. One is upekha arising from one object. This is called ekattasita. And upekha arising from many objects. Upekha arising from many objects are our six senses. Upekha arising from one object is attaining neither attaining akasananchayatana, the infinity of space, infinity of perception, infinity of perception of nothingness, and perception of neither form or non-form. What do you call? Neither perception nor non-perception. And this upekha arising from perception of infinity of space, perception of infinity of perception, vijnana, consciousness, perception of nothingness, perception of neither what do you call, perception or non-perception. Neither perception, non-perception. That is neva sanya, na sanya. This perception, this upekha in all these four attainments is called ekattasit upekha. That means upekha in all these four is the same. And then this upekha also is divided into two. That is atamyata and tamyata. That means thinking that upekha is mine or upekha is not mine. Now, the one upekha which we think is not mine, it is just upekha, is the highest upekha, highest feeling. And then that is better than samisa upekha. Samisa upekha is the person who practices, a person who has samisa upekha cannot go beyond form. Rupangsha nati vatati. Buddha says, Rupangsha nati vatati. Because his upekha goes and stay somewhere, stay with the form, and it cannot go beyond form. Therefore, niramisa upekha is better. Among niramisa upekha, the feeling, if we think that it is my upekha, then it is polluted. It comes with ego, man, I consciousness. If one knows upekha is upekha, there is no owner. There is no owner. It is just upekha. That is the highest upekha because it is closest to nibbana. So I think what is the question? Uh, I, I forgot the question when I was explaining the answer.
Are we aiming to end all the mental feelings or only unwholesome mental feelings?
Yeah, now you see, all mental feelings we have overcome. And after overcoming, we have equanimity, that also is a feeling. And that feeling will disappear from the mind only if we think that this is not mine. This is not mine. It is just upekha. It is the highest type of upekha, which is very close to nibbana, which you cannot feel in your ordinary senses. When you attain that state, all you experience is upekha without claiming the ownership of that upekha. No owner. It is just upekha. There you merge with upekha, and there is no any particular feeling that you can put your finger on. And that is what Buddha recommended us to practice. That's, I think, in Salayatana Vibhanga Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. I will check that later on and correct it if I'm wrong in my tomorrow's talk. These days I tend to forget names, so don't worry about the name, but the fact is the same. Okay, another question.
Bhante, do you have any recommendations about how to deal with confusion and indecision in daily life?
I think,
And uncertainty.
yeah, there is no one single answer to this, but I can suggest that if you live a very simple life, and simplicity is one of the ways of minimizing your confusion. You all know when there are so many things to do. I don't have to list them. You know, in every day, millions of things are there. If you try to do all of them, you definitely will be confused. No doubt about that. And therefore, you have to prioritize your jobs, deeds, function. When you prioritize, you will see what is the most important at that moment. There is this prioritizing work or job can be done with mindfulness. With mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, you see what you needs most, you keep it and you do it. And then go to the next in your priority list and then do it. And so forth, when you prioritize your duties, your jobs and responsibilities, then it becomes somewhat easy for you to reduce your confusion. Anybody can get confused when there are so many things to do. And then that is number one. And number two actually is you have to, in addition to simplifying your life, practicing meditation, you have to train yourself to restrain as I mentioned yesterday, there are 5 ways of restraining. Khanti, the patience, mindfulness, effort, then wisdom, then what is the other one?
Sati.
Sati.
Oh, you said Sati.
I mentioned Sati. Sati Sangvara, Sila Sangvara.
Sila.
Sila Sangvara. Sila is discipline, morality. Morality. So when we restrain ourselves in these five-fold restraints, then it becomes easy for us to reduce our confusion and easy to develop a mindfulness and gain some concentration. With these things, you can minimize your confusions. Of course, confusion arises as long as we have ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Number one, suffering. When you understand how suffering arises from your own experience, it helps you to develop your faith in the Dhamma, the Buddha, and the Sangha, and also make sort of a determination, chanda, to make, chanda is will, you make a will to let go of what is not necessary in your life. Not necessary. They just as a habit, you do certain things. And when you restrain yourself, discipline yourself, you can sort out what is important, what is not. Okay.
Bhante, one person would like to know if people with mental disorders such as dementia are able to attain enlightenment.
It is very unlikely because one has to be mindful. When one has dementia, one cannot be mindful. Mindfulness, without mindfulness, you cannot attain enlightenment. Of course, you can forget not only unwholesome thing, even wholesome thing you forget. Because this physical, mental disorder and deteriorating our mental capacity and memorizing capacity, and therefore we have dementia. And therefore as soon as we notice this, we must try to stay alert, mindful, and reduce our greed, let go. Sometimes when we have dementia, it works differently in different persons. They not only forget things, but because of forgetfulness, they even get upset, angry, nervous. And these things one should notice and try to take some medical advice and try to stay alert, awake, mindful, and develop your patience to understand the mental state. If it is in advanced state, it would be very difficult for that person to practice meditation. Yeah. Yes?
You want another one?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, Bhante, what is the difference between mindfulness and concentration?
Surely, even when you hear these two words, you immediately can see the difference. Concentration is focusing mind only on one object. Mindfulness doesn't have one particular object. Any object, any object is good for mindfulness. Why is that? Every object, everything. Objects means the things that the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind can observe. That is sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. These are the objects. And you can use any of these objects, or all of them, to develop your mindfulness. Why and how? Because all of them are very clearly, unmistakably marked with three characteristics. All of them are impermanent, all of them are unsatisfactory, none of them has permanent self. These three characteristics are very clearly marked. Don't ask me who marked them, because they marked by themselves. As they arise, impermanence arises with them. Unsatisfactoriness arises with them. Non-self. Self is something we deliberately imposed upon them. They don't arise with the self. For our convenience, we use the word self, which they don't, which doesn't arise with the rising of those things, and therefore we can see they are unreal. So the real three marks are: they are clearly marked with impermanence. You don't have to do anything, you just pay attention to your own personal experience. Any moment you can see impermanence. Any moment. Because it is always there. Always there. Whether the Buddhas come into existence, or Jesus came to existence, or Muhammad came to existence, or Abraham came to existence or not, impermanence is there. Always. All we have to do is just to pay little attention to our experience. So, unsatisfactoriness, since they are impermanent, they necessarily are unsatisfactory, not satisfying. And therefore, they also don't have permanent self. Since all these are, every object is marked with these three things, what we do in mindfulness meditation, we see them very clearly. What is the purpose of seeing them very clearly? So that we will not kill ourselves to become attached to them. We will not develop our hatred to reject them. We will not be confused thinking that there is something permanent in them. These are the three things that always obsess our mind to make our life painful and unhappy and introduce suffering. And therefore, for vipassana meditation or mindfulness meditation, any object you can use, provided you have a very sincere, honest, unconfused state of mind to see these three characteristics. Therefore, for concentration, you take only one object and focus your mind on the superficial appearance of the object. Superficial. Mindfulness penetrates the superficiality and goes deep inside to see inner mechanism, inner mechanism. And therefore, this is the difference between concentration and mindfulness. With these friends, I like to stop this morning's session. I'm glad you asked me this question. I hope I have answered them to may not be your satisfaction for my satisfaction. I answered them and keep asking me more questions. And let us end this session. May all beings who are suffering from this COVID-19, may they all be free from that suffering very quickly, return to normal life, and live long in very good health. There are millions of others who are alive, suffering, grieving, lamenting over the death of their loved ones. We want to wish them to be free from that grief through the understanding of the Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma, and through their very sincere, honest practice of meditation. And then live long in very good physical and mental health. And then there are some others who are in helping capacities like doctors, nurses, hospital assistants, and facilitators. They are wonderful people. They are sacrificing their lives. They don't do all these things for comfort. They have to, doctors, for instance, even they are on call, they just have to go. And nurses also have to be there 24 hours to take care of these people. And they are wonderful, compassionate people, and hospital staffs and so forth. May they all live long in very good health. And there are people who support them financially and otherwise, giving spiritual support, material support, financial support to help these people. Especially, we can see this due to this COVID-19, so many wonderful nature of people began to manifest, began to express. And only now we begin to see how wonderful, marvelous, compassionate people are in the world. How many? So many. Because they want to help all these people. And there are some leaders who also have wonderful qualities with compassion, understanding, and wisdom to make right decision at the right moment to curb and reduce this virus. And also there are other leaders who like to be leaders, and however, unfortunately, they don't have much wisdom, understanding, compassion, patience, tolerance, and so forth. We want to wish them to have all this and to make right decision, wise decision, compassionate decision with understanding to help the world. With this very earnest wish, I would like to end today's answering questions.